Hi everyone. So this is the picture assignment workshop video that I said that I have on the schedule that I said they're supposed to look at. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to talk about some of the issues that I see coming up in some of the preliminary picture assignments that you've been submitting. So one of the things that I want to draw your attention to is a standard way that we have of potentially structuring stories like these that you're writing and all kinds of stories as well. One of the things that we do is we start off and we start to tell us something about the situation that we're about to get into, right? The big issue that we're about to begin to deal with. And then what we do is we say, look, let's either go into the past, sometimes into the future, and explain why that thing was so important. And then we go back to the thing that we're talking about. And that structure is really useful if you start to look at it, look for things. You'll see it comes up a lot in movies and TV shows. But let me show you what I'm talking about here with Catskill that we've already looked at and explain how that operates. So what this student does is starts to talk about Catskill, about the picture that they took in Catskill. So I feel I was my best emotionally, mentally, and physically during the summer of 2019. So they're going in the past about this. My sister and I decided to take a trip to Catskill, New York, where we had vacationed. It holds a special place for us. And so we're just going through kind of talking generally about that experience and why it was going to be so important. It helped relieve my stress, and it didn't require anything besides 2 feet and $12. That was taking the sky lifts over the mountains. We had decided a week prior to drive upstate because everything about home had become tense and heavy. Once we hopped off the Skylab our destination, we began to take pictures. So we're talking all about the circumstances under which this person had that picture of them. You guys didn't see the picture. I didn't show her the picture that she had, but the picture that she has of her on that hike. And then after we start to look at that, we talk about the picture from behind. She took the picture of me that today remains one of my favorites. So we've got a bit of background about that picture. Then over these next couple of paragraphs here is we go into the future and say, look, over the past few years, so much has changed since that great day. Year after year, it became more necessary to finish high school, get a job, achieve financial stability, all of these kinds of things that are going on in her life since then. Um, Down here over the last few years, I've become just a new chapter in my life. We're going through into the future and saying, look, back then I had this picture. Let me tell you all these things that have happened since then. And then down here, it was in the middle of updating my son's photo albums when I came across a photo of myself looking across the mountains and standing tall, feeling proud of myself. And so, see how it's kind of like come full circle. What we've done is we said, I'm telling you about the picture, then I'm going to jump into the future and tell you something about how my life has changed and why that might affect how I think about that picture. And then I'm going to go back to the picture. Okay. So I was updating the photo album. I even think about how much I missed that. I think that's how, because I see so much more in this photo, in this picture, I see the best version of myself. Someone who may not have had all the answers, but had the passion and motivation to see her goals through. And so, see how we're coming back to that picture. And because we've seen these things that have happened in the end, then we can talk about this picture in a new way and have new insights for it. And so think about that structure. Mostly, this one does this going into the future. In some of the suggestions that I have for you on your preliminary projects, I suggest potentially going to the past. And you see how we could do that, right? We could be able to say, hey, here's this picture of me. If this were a slightly different essay here about Catskill, here's this picture of me in the Catskills, and then we could go in the past and say, here are the things that were happening to me at the time that made this begin to make this so important to me, and then we come back to the picture. And again, what that does is allows us to, that middle part gives us this way of being able to say, yeah, the picture matters, but I need to give you some other information to show you why that picture matters. Either I need to go in the past to show you why the picture is going to matter, or I'm going to need to go into the future to show you why that picture matters. But either way, I'm going to be able to say, look, there's some other information that you need outside of the picture that helps you understand that. And if we use that as a potential organizing principle, I think it becomes easier to come to some of the larger down here. So think about that as you're working on this project to make it longer, because the longer something gets, the more we have to think about some kind of organizational structure. It's easy to organize things when they're short, but it's harder to organize things when they're long. That's like it's just like I often talk about organization as like organizing your clothes in your drawers. It's easy to organize your clothes if you only have 3 shirts, right? That's easy organization. If you have 40 shirts, that's a lot harder to think about how I'm going to organize them, right? The more stuff you have, the harder it is to organize. And so we can say the same thing here. The more words you have, the harder it is to organize, the more you need to think about that. So consider that possibility, starting off with the idea of what's going on in the picture at first, in the middle, going somewhere else to tell us why that thing is going to matter, and then coming back to the picture. So we had that, and then I wanted you as well to look at something that a student submitted in our class. And this person is talking about ziplining in the Dominican Republic. And again, you can see how this could use that kind of structure. I think there's some really, really good stuff in here. This picture was taken late last year when my friend and I visited the Dominican Republic. I chose this picture of me ziplining through the stunning countryside because it reminds me of freedom. It was my first time ziplining. I remember how scared I was as we were climbing up what seemed at the time a never-ending staircase. As I waited to be properly harnessed and secured, my knees buckled with nervousness. I like that phrase, buckled with nervousness. But that soon disappeared once I was sailing through the air. Below me was a sea of greenery that from such height looked like I was gazing into one of Van Gogh's paintings. I think that's a really nice thing, looking into a painting. As I soared through the air, I felt at peace. Growing up, I never would have imagined that I would take trips like these, but I could and did. The year before I went to Puerto Rico, zipping through the sky made me feel like I was all unbound from the obstacles I faced as a child. And you can see how right in here I've highlighted a number of things because I highlighted this because I thought that was very well written. But I think what's important about this, zipping through the sky made me feel as if I was unbounded from the obstacles I faced as a child. All right, that's the place where we could go into the past and say, what were those obstacles? What were those issues? Let's go back and deal with some of those things. And then when we come back, then we're able to deal with the ziplining this whole other way that says it's not just about this physical feeling of freedom as we're going through on the zip line. It becomes this other kind of freedom that we're able to talk about here. I was able to taste freedom and peace, something I've been longing for. Being up there where the birds soar, I could dream without limits, I could fly. And so, again, I think those are great lines, and those really begin to get us to think about how something like ziplining can be bigger than simply being on this contraption that takes you through the air. It begins to get us to think about how we want to live our lives, how we want to overcome things that have happened in our lives. But I think what we want to know here is here in the beginning, here in the middle, I'm sorry, here in the middle, zipping through the sky made me feel like I was unbounded from the obstacles that I faced as a child. See how we could take that break and go through and say, let's talk about those obstacles. And then when we come back to the zip lining, it'll mean so much more. We'll go, oh, now when you talk about I could dream without limits, I could fly, that really means something, right? Because I've learned what the obstacles were from earlier on. I've learned what those problems were. So think about that potential structure. That's not the only structure that we could use for something like this, but it is definitely one that's potentially useful. So think about that structure of being able to say, I'm going to take you into this particular moment in the picture, tell you something about it, come out and tell you, go to the past or somewhere where I'm going to tell you something about why that might be important to me, what kind of issues I was dealing with that might make something like this so important to me. And then when we come back to that, the images from that picture, they have new ideas to them. So keep that in mind as you begin working on your full project assignments. And if you have any questions, make sure to send me an email.